Today's fresh read is The Will of the Many by James Islington. Now, this is a book with a pretty overwhelmingly strong reception, and it came highly recommended to me, so I was very excited to read it. Although, in the end, I would say I ended up a bit let down. I didn't think the book was as strong as everyone thought it was. I do see why people liked it, and there was a lot to enjoy about it. So, I'm going to dive into the pros, uh, like the pros and cons, not the pros. But before that, I do want to mention I think the book has a lot of similarities to Red Rising and Name of the Wind. And it's important to analyze a book in the context in which it was released. It came after those books. So I do think comparison is kind of necessary of any kind of serious review to the books that might have been an influence or like contemporary, just similar books that I'm sure Islington is aware of. And, not to be a boss guy who's only read Boss Baby, I there's lots of fantasy academy books and rebellion books, but I do think these two have particular similarities that merit that comparison. So yeah, let's kick it off. I think the book does intrigue very well. I think there is a constant tension within the world and a desire to know more. And something that's really interesting about the book is how every time you learn a little bit more, it feels like you've peeled a layer back, but there's like another bigger layer of mystery that's revealed. So I do feel like that level of intrigue is maintained very well, where every time you learn something, you want to learn more. And that did make the book a very fast read for me. It was hard to put down, and I will say Islington did that very well. Now, the book reads very easily. I was a fan of how it was written, the actual prose. I do see some people saying it was a bit flat, but I had no problems with that at all. However, I do want to take some time to go into what I perceive to be the flaws of the book. The protagonist meets basically no resistance throughout this book, in my opinion. It is pretty lame how easy everything is for him, how simply he's able to clear all these challenges and outperform what are supposed to be the smartest people in the world. It doesn't feel rewarding, I would say, a lot of the time. There are a couple occasions where it does, but overall, it feels maybe not unearned, but unsatisfying. Darrow in Red Rising loses sometimes, or maybe even a lot. But even when he doesn't lose, there's often times where he wins or makes very opinionated decisions that have drawbacks. And maybe those drawbacks are yet to come for Viz. But overall, it felt like he was able to get away with doing whatever he wanted a lot of the time and not have to suffer anything for it. There's also a scene in this book where an animal companion is introduced or hinted at, I guess. And I thought this was one of the most ham-fisted inclusions of an animal companion, or most ham-fisted things I've seen in any book, period. I felt like disrespected as a reader, honestly. I was getting like mad, respect my intelligence. This is so ridiculous, but some people liked it, and to each their own there. uh Another issue I'd say that I had, and this is coming from, I'd say, Red Rising and even some Sanderson books I've been reading lately, where the flow carries very well between chapters. In this book, it feels like half the chapters end with Viz saying he's covered in scars and okay, it's time to pass out now. And while his setting does demand a lot of that, I think there's got to be some other ways to end chapters. The setting also isn't used to its full potential. I don't think it's used very well at all, actually. I think the academy setting is a massive opportunity to teach us more about the world through some of these classes, or teach us more about the magic system. Oftentimes, the magic classes in this book just feel like they're babbling about, theoretical words that don't actually tell us, the reader, anything, which is fine. You don't have to know everything about the world, but it does feel like we're a bit let down in what we get to learn. Um, Name of the Wind, for example, has an awesome academy where it does feel like the classes add so much depth to the world, and even navigating the school is very interesting. Whereas in this book, the school felt very like a linear progression, and wasn't nearly as interesting, in my opinion. There's a lot more variation to Kvothe's school journey and stakes that come in different places, different classes, come from different sources that just aren't here. Um, the world also doesn't feel very fleshed out. This is something I've said before, but aside from Aiden, one of the other students at the academy, it doesn't feel like you live in a real world when you're in this book. It feels like the characters are kind of going from room to room, interacting with each other and building on the plot, but it doesn't feel like a part of a large grand world that was conquered by an empire, and what's the outcome of that on the world at large. You don't get any sense of that at all in this book outside of, again, Aiden and maybe one or two other character interactions that come later, which I think is very disappointing. I think there's a chance to dive into the world a bit more with a book like this, or at least hint at it, since it is true that it's a pretty homogenous group that would be at this school. But I overall thought that the setting was quite a letdown, as was the world building, and those two go hand in hand. The book is also rife with characters who are very, very, very close to being cool. I think especially Alkisor and Viridius. Both of them hint at being awesome, complicated characters. Viridius being this charming. Is he actually bad? Is he actually good? Headmaster from like a rival faction. I think it's a bit of a letdown. Maybe this might be too early to judge because he does hint that there's more to come here, so I don't want to make too strong of a judgment there. Then we have Alkisor, who I thought was definitely a letdown. His relationship with Viz had the potential to be very complex, and it did seem like it was going to go that way from the start. Someone who's adding tremendous pressure to Viz's life, but also is a much needed parental figure, and maybe a source of, maybe not companionship, but some kind of mentorship and some kind of warmth. Who knows? I think the relationship ended up being much more one note than I had hoped. And this was a problem with many of the characters. I thought Emissa and Indol, many of the characters of the Academy, were not particularly interesting and pretty underused. I do think Sadosha also was not the most interesting. There's basically no actual compelling antagonist in this book. There is some annoying people for sure, but no one compelling. In terms of good characters, I would say Calidus and Aiden were pretty well written. A bit tropey at times, but they added to the story for sure. Their dynamics were fun, and as I mentioned, Aiden had some sense of grandeur to the world and some sense of like lived-inness to the world around him that I appreciated. There's also Linistia, who is a pretty cool character. Warm at times, very cold at times. I was always feeling something when she was on the page, which I think is good. And then we have Aqua, who I think was kind of a star in a way of the book, where her dynamic with Viz was very interesting and very unique, and it was fun to follow. So I was a fan of that character and what she brought to the book for sure. Yeah, overall, I do feel like the book had so many characters who were just like this close to being truly compelling and fell slightly short of that, or in some cases very short of that, including the main character even, who I think had an interesting hint at a flaw, at a rage problem, which is explored a little bit, not enough in my opinion, especially when the rest of the book is so easy for him. I think that was kind of like an underexplored area of his character, his flaws. So, well, the plot and intrigue is strong. I thought the characters and the world building were quite weak. With all that being said, the book has a tremendous ending. I don't think it's something you should even try to guess at as you read. Just enjoy the story as you go through it. Not to say that the ending just comes out of nowhere. It definitely feels like you're being rewarded for what you've just read, and it feels like it explains things while also opening more questions, something that I like a lot about Islington's writing, although this is the first book of his that I've read. I like it a lot about what I saw in this book. It's an amazing ending, and again, it leaves so many doors open and gets me very excited to read the next book. So overall, I would give this book probably 3.5 stars. I think there were like a lot of flaws here and there that could have made the story a lot better if they were fixed. However, the strong points were strong enough that I enjoyed reading it. I was having fun reading it. I did not enjoy this book by any stretch of the imagination. I do feel like there is a lot of room to grow for the characters, and I'm a sucker for rebellion. I do wish Viz's flaws and his rage being the biggest example were more expanded on within the book, and it was something that was highlighted more as like a flaw of his. But overall, I enjoyed the book, and I'm definitely looking forward to the sequel. So yeah, hope you check it out, or hope you liked it more than me if you already read it. And yeah, let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Bye.